Let's see if I am live. Yep, looks like I'm live. What is up, everyone? I'm not sure how long I'm going to do this for. I have this quick video. I think it's like 9 minutes. So, oh no, it's 14 minutes. Okay, 14 minutes for me is like an hour at least. Um, we'll see if it's too fast at 1.5 because it's the only way we're gonna get through it. But meant to stream earlier. Just weird. I've been getting like terrible migraines and like I had like vertigo today for the first time. It was so weird. But yeah, I don't I gotta figure that out. I think it's just like it's not even like my shoulders are so tight from like I don't know how to explain it. Like I definitely think it's just my body is just too tight and it's like causing migraines and stuff because that's the only explanation I can come up with. But stretch out for a few hours today, so hopefully that fixes it. But if it doesn't, I continue to be annoyed. Or not annoyed, but just less productive. I wouldn't say less productive than I want to be, but just less productive. Like, have you ever had the feeling where you want to do something and you just physically can't? That's the feeling it is.
In 1888, a few months before the end of his most prolific and final period of writing, Friedrich Nietzsche wrote in Ecce Homo that a psychologist without equal speaks from my writings. This is perhaps the first insight gained by a good reader.
A psychologist without equal speaks for my writings. If you guys want to know the number one reason why people don't like Nietzsche, it's this. That's literally all you need to know about him. But his arrogance comes from, to me, it's an understanding, and at a certain point, it became detrimental. But I don't think confidence or arrogance is necessarily a bad thing. It's just when it comes at the expense of others. And to me, I don't think his arrogance is ever confronting and intentionally um, dismissive of the reader. I think it's dismissive of other people. But this is where he kind of pisses a lot of people off. And the greatest example of this is I don't think Nietzsche says anything Emerson doesn't say, but Emerson is pretty much beloved. I mean, maybe people think he's a little out there, but I don't really hear anybody saying like he's this monstrous figure like a lot of people say about Nietzsche. And I think he's one of the most misunderstood philosophers I've ever studied because like it's the idea of like people projecting their own weirdness onto him. Like a lot of his things are about the destruction of systems, the destruction of morality, and the replacement with the individual. Where a lot of people read him and they replace it with a new system, which doesn't make any sense because it's like Camus said about rebellion. Every single rebellion becomes exactly what it was started to fight against.
Nietzsche viewed himself as the first psychologist amongst the great philosophers, writing, "Who among the philosophers before me was in any way a psychologist? Before me, there simply was no psychology."
I
Given
don't
that Sigmund
know if
Freud, Carl Jung,
so. I don't know if it's a good translation because that doesn't really make like just the precise wording of this. I don't know if that's exactly what he's trying to say. Maybe it is. I don't know. But I'd be really interested to learn different languages so that I can read a lot of my favorite writers in their native tongues. Like I mean, obviously like I can read Shakespeare in English, but it's gonna be archaic. But it'd be interesting to read Nietzsche in German. I think Jung wrote a lot in German. I know he wrote some in English as well. It'd be interesting to read Camus in French, Dostoevsky in Russian. Um, what's it? I'm trying to think of what Khalil Gibran wrote in, but I can't imagine his poetry in the native tongue. But yeah, that's something way down the line when ex when I've read everything that I've wanted to read in
simply
English.
was no psychology. Given that Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, and Alfred Adler, three giants of 20th century psychology, were all heavily influenced by Nietzsche's psychology.
If you read the interpretations of dreams, Freud literally cites Nietzsche, he cites Schopenhauer, and he cites I think he cited did he cite Meister Eckhart? I can't remember if he cited him, but I know Schopenhauer cited Meister Eckhart, which is weird. And it's interesting to see how all of these figures are influenced by Faust and how I don't know, it's like Faust is at the same level of influence on these psychologists and philosophers as Shakespeare is onto poetry.
Logical insights, his grandiose self assessment seems to have contained at least a kernel of truth. Nietzsche's psychological investigations were not conducted for the sake of disinterested theoretical speculation, as in his eyes, knowledge should always be sought first and foremost for the purpose of energizing life. In his essay on the use and abuse of history for life, he quoted Goethe: I hate everything that merely instructs me, without augmenting or directly invigorating my.
I hate everything that merely instructs me without argumenting or directly invigorating my activities. That's a beautiful quote. He said it Goethe. I cannot say this guy's name. Like I was pronouncing it as Goth, Goethe. Dude, like I can't find a good person saying it online. So if somebody knows exactly how to say it, can you please tell me? Because I avoid saying this name at all costs. I will say Faust instead, like I just did.
Activities. Nietzsche undertook his psychological ventures for the sake of discovering how to fulfill the maxim which formed the subtitle of his autobiography, Ecce Homo, how one becomes what one is. In The Gay Science, Nietzsche echoed this idea. What does your conscience say? You shall become the person you are.
If you want to get the most bang for your buck with Nietzsche, I would read The Gay Science. If you want to get his most destructive, I would say read Beyond Good and Evil. And if you want to read Nietzsche at his most poetic, consistently read Thus Spoke Zarathustra. What's up, Amy? How's everything?
In this video, we will shed light on what it means to become who you are, and in the process,
My bad
explore
if this
some of
is late.
Nietzsche's
Dude,
fascinating
I don't know if you were
psychological
here
insights.
earlier, but I was like, I had a migraine like all day and I had vertigo. Like I've never had that before. Like I was literally sitting in a chair and I felt like I was on a roller coaster going full speed. It was the weirdest thing ever. But I have enough energy to do it right now. But hopefully I wake up with feeling much better tomorrow. Who knows?
Countless philosophers have attempted to understand the human mind, discern its tendencies, biases, potentials, nature, and origin. But Nietzsche claimed that all those before him were blinded in their psychological ventures by not only an unquestioned acceptance of the socially prevailing beliefs and moral standards, but more significantly, by a fear of exploring the depths within themselves.
Okay, so what he's saying here is extremely important. So this is really what you see with most academics, and this is why most academics come off as phony, is because they're unwilling to say something that will ruin their credibility. You know, even Jung is one of the most, if you read his writings, he's one of the most like transgressive in terms of like bridging the gap between extraterrestrial phenomena and deep religious insights with analytical psychology. And it's like even he was hesitant to share some of his writings. That's why the Red Book wasn't published during his lifetime, and it's this fear that really keeps people from that great discovery. This is something that Freud struggled with himself. Freud, when you read Freud, you can tell that he's a brilliant person. I mean, he's not a great person, but you can tell he's very intelligent, and you can tell he's at the precipice of a great discovery, but he always stops a little short. Like you read his dream analysis, the only thing I've read by him so far, I obviously know about Freud, I obviously know about a lot of his theories, but the only thing I personally read by him is the interpretation of dreams, and it's really close to being a masterpiece. I don't know if that's controversial. I'm sure there's someone out there that is going to find that offensive, but I always think his dream analysis is really close. But he's unwilling to see the individual as unique. He kind of likes to break it down into these large boxes and try to capture everything. And it seems like it's limited in that sense. This is the opposite of what Jung did. Jung liked to treat every individual as an individual and treat them as such. But yeah, it's the inability to take that leap of faith and embrace that. I don't know if it's fear or going against the norms that is really the largest factor in why some of these greats didn't push the boundaries. And think of the people that have really kind of defined their era, kind of defined their field. They just didn't care about this. Nikola Tesla did not care about what people thought about him. Nikola Tesla was so smart that even the smartest people wouldn't have understood him, so he didn't really care about what people thought. The dude could formulate blueprints in his mind with his psychic like vision and transcribe it onto paper, and boom, there's an invention. Like, how do you explain that to someone that undergoes the normal scientific method? It's just not going to make sense. Einstein was able to tie together ideas that are seemingly not congruent at all. He was playing with bubbles in a bubble bath when he discovered the special theory of relativity. It's like there's there's a certain unwillingness to give into this almost intuition like force that we all have. And this is really what stagnates progress. This is really what stagnates every single industry. Um, yeah, that's all I gotta say on this. Hope I feel better. Thank you. Thank you. I'll feel better in a few days. I don't know, it's been really weird. Like I've experienced a lot of migraines before, but not this many days in a row. And it was always because like I wasn't sleeping or I had a concussion or something. Like I otherwise should be healthy, and it's just not. I don't know what's going on.
In Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche explained, all psychology so far has got hung up on moral prejudices and fears. It has not dared to descend into the depths.
Okay, so this is exactly what I was saying, and the whole idea of beyond good and evil is encapsulated in this quote. So the idea behind beyond good and evil. Wow, we're 2 minutes in. I'm probably like 15 minutes into the video. Um, is that think about Victor's history. So like I I get into a business transaction with you and I get the better end of the deal. For me, that's a great deal. For you, that's a bad deal. And it's the idea that everything that we perceive is not objective, but it's subjective. It's objective for you because it's how you observe it, but it's subjective for the world around you because it's everything else perceives it differently. And that's really the idea he's talking about here.
Nietzsche conceived the psyche as constituted by multidimensional layers and possessing a complexity which renders total and complete knowledge of it an impossibility. Heraclitus, the pre Socratic Greek philosopher,
Heraclitus, the only thing I know about him, and I think this is really the only thing you need to know about him, he has this famous quote, "You can never step in the same river twice." And this is one of the best quotes ever because it talks about the impermanence of things. It talks about the fundamental nature of life. Emerson wrote a whole essay on this called Circles, but basically this quote means that by the time you stick your foot in the water, it's already a new river. That water that first touched your toe is all the way downstream. And it's like this is how everything is. Everything's in a constant state of flux. Everything is either being born or slowly dying, slowly withering away, slowly turning into something else, decaying or growing as you see it. And it's the acceptance of this fact that is really the building blocks of all great religious and philosophical belief systems.
whose aphorisms exerted a heavy influence on the development of Nietzsche's ideas, captured the complex quality of the psyche. If you went in search of it, you would not find the boundaries of the soul, though you traveled every road. So deep is its measure. How can the human being know itself?
That sounds a
Asked
lot
Nietzsche.
like
It is a thing darkened the psyche.
my
If
bad.
you went in
So this quote right here, I think this is one of the first few pages of the Tao Te Ching. But basically, the book, I don't know if it starts off with this, but there's a very significant line that says the eternal Tao is not the Tao that can be described. And that's what this idea is talking about. It's not just your soul, it's everything. Everything is beyond comprehension. Everything is beyond understanding.
search of it, you would not find the boundaries of the soul, though you traveled every road. So deep is its measure. How can the human being know itself? Asked Nietzsche. It is a thing dark and veiled. And if the hair has seven skins,
What's up, X4YZ? I want to read Circle's essay, hopefully just once. It's really good. It's when I feel like it starts off I don't know if it starts off slow, but it starts off and he tries to explain this idea. Once it clicks, it's like, wow, it's something tremendous. I started reading it. I was literally I was like, all right, I'm gonna read a few pages. I ended up reading the whole thing in one sitting. It was just something I couldn't put down. But basically, it's talks about how we're all part of one big cycle and we're all playing our part. And we don't know what we're here for, but we're here to play that part. I just woke up from sleep to pray. And you hit me with psychology. Ah, this is more philosophy.
The human can solve.
But I think I think psychology is when you apply philosophy to the psyche. That makes sense. When you try to apply it in your own life. Quick question, DDP or Kamza? Dude, you're hitting me with the difficult questions. So I want to say I want to say that Kamzat wins, but DDP, there's gonna be like a falling piano or something. Like I swear that guy's just not gonna lose. Like I don't know what he did, but like that guy is the luckiest man I've ever seen, and he always finds a way to just I don't know. He's just I I want to bet like I don't want to bet against him per se because I like him, but I just have a hard time saying that he's gonna lose because I thought he was not necessarily gonna get beat bad, but I always thought like, oh, this is gonna be a close fight. He'll probably lose the decision, but like he always just he finds a way. So I don't know. On, on paper, Kamzat wins, but Jerkis can't read. That is the perfect way of putting it. I think that is at, at the very least we're gonna have a really good fight, and the card looks pretty good, so I'm excited. And I'm really more excited that there's not going to be any more pay-per-views because it's just the stupidest model ever. Like, I don't know why Dana White is doing these archaic methods when I feel like the UFC should really focus more on like fan interactions and pay-per-view sales as well as UFC events. Because, dude, every time they do like a UFC event in like a small city, they have a few good fights on it and it always sells out. Like that's millions of dollars every time. It's weird that they just fly people to the apex and kind of eat the cost on it, but
Off
it is what it
70
is.
times 7 and still not be able to say, now that is what you really are. That is no longer outer shell. Most individuals, fearing the complex depths within, remain at the superficial and surface layer of their psyche, industriously mindful of their common comedy and not at all of themselves. Not one to follow the crowd, Nietzsche took an opposing approach. I undertook something that not everyone may undertake, he wrote in the preface to The Dawn of Morning. I descended into the depths. I bored into the foundations.
Okay, so this is something that Jung credits to be fundamental to his ability to be such a good doctor. And this is what you discover in the Red Book. And I'm gonna butcher the quote. I'm gonna have to paraphrase it, but it's basically Jung said he had to go to the depths of hell to confront his own psyche, to understand his own capacity for evil, in order to turn it into something righteous, in order to curtail it, in order to understand where he falls short so that he can be better. And that's really what he's talking about. Like, you know, think about Alcoholics Anonymous. Like, the first step is admitting you have a problem. If you don't analyze the problem, if you don't understand it, if you can't categorize it, if you don't know where it stems from, then you're always going to be shooting in the dark. You're not going to find the solution. That's really what he's saying here.
A fear of descending into the depths of one's psyche is not unfounded, which is why it is something that not everyone may undertake. For those who
It's the problem with this, it's really easy to say, but it's always the parts of ourselves that we're not willing to accept. The parts of ourselves that basically admits that we're not as good of a person as we think we are, that we weren't justified when we wronged someone else, that we did something out of spite. Like it's always those moments that are hidden down there. It's always those things that we're not willing to overcome. It's always the recognition that something happened to us a long, long time ago and we're not willing to move on. That's really what's hidden in these depths.
lack sufficient courage and are ungifted in psychological investigations, a voluntary descent into the inner foundations of one's mind could engender temporary, or in rare cases, permanent madness. Writing of the dangers which confront the adventurer and circumnavigator of that inner world called human being, Nietzsche wrote, he enters a labyrinth and multiplies a thousandfold the dangers that life in itself brings with it. of which not the least is that nobody can see how and where he loses his way, becomes solitary, and is torn to pieces by some cave minotaur of conscience.
So what he's talking about is confronting your own demons, confronting the things that you're afraid of. So like if you're afraid of public speaking, that will always be something that haunts you, that will always be something that holds you back. And like think at some point in our lives, like if you get any level of success, you have to do a presentation. You have to be able to explain your ideas. You have to be able to in some way sell yourself to someone, whether it's just in a job interview, whether it's just, you're asking someone on a date. Most of life is salesmanship. I hate to say it, but it kind of breaks down to that. Not saying you have to be a slick car salesman, but um our inability to confront the things that are really in front of us is something that will always rear its head until we face that problem. So, like, if you have relationship problems, you're going to keep getting that same kind of person. You're going to keep attracting that same kind of person until you deal with yourself, until you realize that you are the problem, until you realize that in every scenario, you are 50% of it. And when you can start to perform better, when you can start to behave better, when you can start to act with more authenticity, then those problems just disappear. And this is something for the longest time it didn't click. It really didn't make sense. It wasn't something that I could, you know, comprehend and admit and be honest about. But the moment you start being honest with these ideas, and the moment you just say, I'm gonna have to face it sooner or later, and the later I face it, the worse it's gonna become. Think of your problems, think of your demons as something that starts at the size of an ant, and by the time you face it, it's the size of Godzilla. But if you don't face that monster now, it's just gonna get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And the truth is, these prisons, these monsters, these things that are holding you back are your own creation. So with that understanding, if you created it, that means that you have the power to make something that powerful. You have the power to overcome something that powerful. It's I don't know. I think if you play these semantic games, and I think if you're able to do this in real time, it's really a way to uplift yourself through any scenario.
While exploring the depths within may be a foolish danger for the many, it is a necessary endeavor for the few. The psyche of a small minority of individuals, in comparison with that of the overwhelming mass, is constituted by both greater depths and a higher degree of turmoil. To ensure they are not torn asunder by the contradictions, conflicts, and abysses within, such individuals are driven inward to explore and impose order on their psyche, fashioning and sculpting themselves into a harmonious totality. Nietzsche presented Goethe as the exemplary individual who
This guy, if you don't know anything about this guy, he is literally the definition of a Renaissance man. He was like a public servant for like 70 years, was like a tremendous poet, was a great scientist, inspired basically every single German intellectual who has ever lived. It's the more you read about this guy, the more you're like, is this guy like a superhero? It's very weird.
was able to
Every every philosopher, every psychologist from the past 2 centuries, it's probably different now because I feel like there's this weird modern influence, but anything late what is it, 19th century, early 20th century, everything you read will cite this guy. It's so weird, and it's so weird how much his name came up. Like I literally had to read Faust because of how much this guy's name came up, and I just didn't understand the references. I didn't understand what he was getting at. Faust is super interesting. It's just it's it's difficult to read in the sense that it's very weird. It's poetic, and I don't know if it quite translates that well. And that's really the problem with it. It's written in German, and I don't know if the style can carry over that well. But I liked it. I just don't really remember that much. I probably should reread it. But
impose form on his inner chaos. What he wanted was totality, Nietzsche wrote, describing Goethe. He disciplined himself to wholeness. He created himself. To create oneself does not mean to form oneself out of nothing. As humans, we cannot, as some falsely claim, be fashioned in any way we please. Each of
you don't like the idea of self-improvement is a misnomer. You don't you don't become someone new, you become who you are. Like the characteristics that you gain are really just like your marble, and slowly as you get better and better and better, that rock gets chipped away and away and away, and what was underneath that the whole time is present. And Nietzsche's idea of the self, he's going to explain it, but I'm going to explain it in like 30 seconds. The idea of the self is that you embody your idealized version. This is what he called the Ubermensch, the Superman. You embody this, and in every moment you carry yourself in this ideal. And you're not stopped by anything. Nothing holds you back. Nothing makes you say, I can't do this because of this. And every moment you act out of your own self authenticity, I'll say. So I was about to say self-interest, but that's not really the best way to think about it. Like when you do a decision, you don't have to think about it. Like when you're playing a sport and everything's flowing, you don't have to think about what you're doing. It's just muscle memory. It's that idea. It's that you flow through your life like this. The Taoists have a very good way of explaining. It's called Wu Wei, and it's non-effort. It's no action, and it's the mo like think of when you're walking. Are you thinking about walking? You're not. It's just something that just happens. And this, if you can live your life in this way, and if you can live your life in this way in every moment, then you become, as Nietzsche said, the Ubermensch, and you inspire generations of humanity to come.
Of us, according to Nietzsche, has a deep and
He
abiding
failed. That
nature, which
was
places definite set limits on who and what we can become.
it's easier said than done.
At the bottom of us, really deep down, there is, of course, something unteachable, some granite of spiritual fathom, of predetermined decision and answer to predetermined selected questions. Whenever a cardinal problem is at stake, there speaks an unchangeable, "This is I." Our nature is sculpted not only by early
So what he's saying is only you can be like we could live the exact same life but be different people. There's just something fundamental to all of us that will always give us differences. There's something fundamental to me that will always make me, whenever something's popular, like there's something in me that's like, no, this shit sucks. Whereas some people are more inclined if this is popular, then maybe other people like it. Maybe I can understand. Maybe I can see the universality. Like there's little differences that make us who we are, and it's when we can embrace these differences instead of hiding it. And again, this is where you see the overlap between Jung and Nietzsche. It's very, very similar. Nietzsche's idea of the Übermensch and the eternal recurrence are basically Jung's individuation process, which is finding yourself through different activities, finding yourself through exploring the inexpressed facets of your psyche. That makes sense.
personal life experiences and the traits and dispositions inherited from our ancestors, but also, according to Nietzsche, by historical forces. The traditions and experiments of past cultures continue to live on within us, influencing our life and experience from the deeper layers of our psyche.
I don't know what country everyone's from, but think of like for me the myth of the American dream. Like it's something that has been said for what almost 250 years now, and yet was it ever really a thing? And we think of the American dream, we think of like working, having enough to live, but was there ever a time where that was really true? Was there ever a time where there wasn't just craziness going on in the world? And it's like these traditions, these ideas, these archetypal images, we'll say, carry with us and guide us. Like you go to different cultures across the world, their definition of a hero is different, but in some way it's someone that sacrifices themselves for the sake of innocence, for the sake of people that can't defend themselves. And that's something that you'll see held in high esteem in every single society that you visit. And yet we think that we're so different. It's kind of funny.
The past of every form and way of life, of cultures that formerly lay right next to or on top of each other, now flows into us modern souls. Our drives now run back everywhere. We ourselves are a kind of chaos. Given that the past of every form and way of life continues to live on in us, Nietzsche proposed we need to engage in an active exploration of history if we are to attain self knowledge. Direct self observation, he wrote, is not nearly sufficient for us to know ourselves. We need history, for the past flows on within us in 100 waves.
The most interesting part that I learned from history, that I learned from, my favorite things to read are classics because it feels like I'm home in that area. It feels like there's a certain universal existence, a universal path of life that we all kind of experience. And when you can see it in a different context, removed from, political leanings, removed from cultural leanings, and you can kind of just put yourself in that world and put yourself in that person's experience, it's really tremendous. It's really learning how someone else would respond in a similar situation to yourself. Schopenhauer said something along the lines of, when you read, you're basically allowing someone else's brain to think through you. I think that goes along with treating people as ends in themselves to protect the weak. What do you mean by that?
Just as the past continues to live on in modern cultures, embodied in myths, traditions, and institutions, so too our psyche has been shaped and sculpted by past ages. The tendency of the modern individual to feel he has been arbitrarily thrown and abandoned into an absurd world is the direct result of lacking what Nietzsche called a historical sense, of having no conscious connection to the past, and therefore failing to dig one's roots through the strata of history. In an early essay titled On the Use and Abuse of History for Life, Nietzsche contrasted the condition of a people which has lost faith in its ancient history and has fallen into a restless and a constant search for novelty.
Think of think of the people, like, I feel like I say this a lot, but I feel like it's a very important thing to say. Who who do we hold in high esteem in our society? You know, for America, it's celebrities, it's reality TV shows, it's artists that are completely manufactured, it's these WWE politicians that, one guy plays the heel and the other guy plays whatever the good guy is, and it's all like the same thing, and nothing has any depth. Everything is shallow, and yet we wonder why we feel so lost. There's nothing to cling on. There's no actual hope, and that's something that's going to correct itself probably very soon. I feel like there's going to be some universal tying myth that's going to wrap this up like a bow. Because you could see the restlessness in most people. You could see the anxiety, the fear, and the lack of hope. And times like this always find some sort of savior, some sort of hope, some sort of symbol to unite behind. But for the time being, we can't repay a favor, so you can't treat them as needs. Oh, okay, okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, that's a good point. Yeah, yeah. I just didn't get the first part. I didn't get what you're saying.
After
That's
novelty,
that
with
makes
the
sense.
individual who has cultivated a historical sense and attained the sense of well being of a tree for its roots, the happiness to know oneself in a manner not entirely arbitrary and accidental, but as someone who has grown out of a past, as an air, flower, and fruit. But it is not only the cultures of past millennia which continue to live on within us, for in the deeper layers of our psyche exist prehistorical drives and impulses.
What is this picture?
Just as our body contains relics of earlier developmental stages, stretching back even to the reptilian age, so too our psyche contains within its depths primitive drives which stretch back into the prehistory of humanity and animality. Every human
This is what So early Nietzsche would agree with what I'm about to say. This is what Schopenhauer called the will to live, and Nietzsche later on in his career coined the term the will to power. And I'll explain the difference real quick because I think it's important for what he's about to say. So the will to live is like the force that kind of guides us for self-preservation. So think of people that stab other people in the back because they think it's gonna help them out. But in the long term, it's really a dumb decision because now you lost an ally, now you lost a friend, and it's probably gonna come back to bite you in the long term. But it's these little things that we self-sabotage because there's a force that compels us to. Nietzsche thought it was a little bit more insidious, and he thought it was the will to power in the sense that individuals, human beings, animals felt the need to exact their will on other people because there was a drive for power, there was a drive for control. And I see the arguments in both of them. I would tend to lean to Schopenhauer because I don't think everything's necessarily insidious, but again, it could just be a semantic definition that I am agreeing with.
being, no matter how
Living
civilized
can be
and
a
developed
powerful
on the
act,
surface, is still an animal and archaic man within the depths of his
I
being.
guess, but
I have discovered for myself that
Nietzsche's is like, so I don't know if I give it the the example that I would use for Nietzsche is what he used in the gay science. And it's like, let's say you get someone a job and they really can't help you out, but the fact that you stuck your neck out for them and got them an opportunity, kind of expands your circle of influence because now people know you have that kind of pull. Now people know that you can kind of, do what you want, even though it doesn't really benefit you. And like, while it might seem a generous act to do, it was really done for you seeking out that fulfillment of that ability to have that power. I think that's one of the better examples I've seen.
To ancient humanity and animality, wrote Nietzsche. Indeed, the entire primal age and past of all sentient being continues in me to create, to love, to hate, to infer. In these uncivilized layers reside what Zarathustra called the beast within, potentially destructive inclinations which can overtake and possess the human being.
He's talking about Nietzsche, Zarathustra, not the real Zarathustra, not Zoroastrianism. He's talking about Nietzsche's, I guess it's fictitious, but his
Such as the
example.
drive to aggression and unbridled sexual lust. Instead of advocating for the repression of the beast within, Nietzsche recommended we explore and become familiar with these potentially destructive vestiges of the ancient past. Just as a raging river can be harnessed for its energy, so too
Again, this goes back to Jung's ideas of confronting your own wickedness, confronting your own evil so that it doesn't subvert you later on. Um, think about people that are in power that have the ends justify the means. You have to crack a few eggs to make an omelet. These are people that don't understand their capacity for wickedness. These are people that are capable of great evil, but they think they're doing it for the greater good because they can't recognize this evil in them. They think everything they do is righteous. They think everything they do is for the good of the state, as Machiavelli would say.
the uncivilized layers of the psyche, if channeled and handled properly, can vitalize life. The most short sighted and pernicious way of thinking wants to make the great sources of energy, those wild torrents of the soul that often stream forth so dangerously and overwhelmingly, dry up altogether, instead of taking their power into service and economizing it.
So yeah, he's talking about like think of somebody that's like aggressive, think of somebody that's a go-getter. That's not necessarily a bad trait if you put it into something good. You know what I mean? Like it's a good thing to have. I'm trying to think of the right word. Like, because aggressiveness isn't the right word. Like, it's a good thing to be proactive. We'll say, let's say you're in the business world and it's like you have to get X amount of sales. Like, you're gonna make that amount of calls. You're driven to do that thing. But you put that trait in someone that's less evolved. You put that trait into a caveman. That's gonna make them more vicious. You know what I mean? You can always curtail your traits and your characteristics to be positive or negative. This is something Emerson said. I feel like I'm tying Jung, Emerson, Nietzsche together a lot tonight, but Emerson said that there's no such thing as a good characteristic that is not also bad. Ambition is the greatest example. Ambition is something that will make you a Bezos, an Elon Musk, an Alexander the Great, a Julius Caesar, but it's also the downfall of all of those men. It's also the hubris that is built up through ambition that always stabs them in the back. They become their own worst enemy. And it's the same thing as negative traits can also become something good. Napoleon was notorious. I think he was ugly. I don't know if this is British propaganda. It might be. Look at me making British propaganda. That should have ended in 1776, right? Um, but we'll just use the propaganda. Napoleon was ugly, he was short, and this drove him to be a great general. I mean, it depends what side of the war you're on, if he was great or not, but he was a great general. He did conquer a lot of land, and it was his Napoleon complex that forced him to rely on different attributes that otherwise weren't expressed at the time. It forced him to be unconventional. The whole reason why Napoleon started his downfall was because he started fighting wars like everyone else was. You know, I think it was in Spain. I think Spain was the starting of the cracks in the foundation with the French Empire. But basically, prior to this, he was really reliant on a chain of command that could displace um, news, put it up all the way to him, and then he could say things back, and it would spread like rapid, so he could really adjust his battle plans in real time. And then when he's in the Spanish campaign, He starts relying on artillery, he starts relying on more heavy machinery, and it really it took his edge away. He started fighting wars like these old Prussian generals that he was just destroying because of his maneuverability. It's not what you're capable of doing, it's what you choose to do with your capability. Yes, that's a good point. I
But
like
it is
that.
not only destructive drives and impulses which reside in the prehistoric layers of our psyche. There also exists what Nietzsche called the divine animal, ancient instincts regulating unconscious and infallible drives, which enabled
The
our
will to power,
ancestors to
or the will
survive
to
and
live.
even flourish in harsh and uncertain environments prior to the emergence of the modern form of consciousness.
So, on the genealogy of morality, genealogy, I can't read. On the genealogy of morality is early Nietzsche. Um, I think so. Hold on, let me check. Because it's gonna change the point I made. Yeah, it's early Nietzsche, it looks like. And basically really early on into his career, he kind of agreed with Schopenhauer, and then later on he kind of took it his own way. So this is him kind of agreeing with Schopenhauer's will to live and kind of using it as a framework before he coins the will to power.
The modern individual has all but lost touch with these ancient instincts. Relying solely on his consciousness, his weakest and most fallible organ, he stumbles blindly through life, oblivious that in the recesses of his mind are archaic helpers.
So this is what Jung would call the shadow. So thinking in modern day existence, we don't really have an outlet for anger. We don't really have an outlet for aggression. We don't really have an outlet for these natural forces that are in us. And think of how many people snap. Like we hear stories all the time of, somebody getting road rage in traffic, and it's like, wow, that person cut you off, and, you know, 10 seconds of your life is ruined. Oh, what are you gonna do now? And, you know, there's people that lose their lives for stupid shit every day. And it's because of this. It's because we hide this more animalistic nature. We don't go out in nature. We don't do physical activities. We don't, you know, especially for young men, test yourselves physically. Like, I think if you really want to like talk about like crime statistics and why crime is so crazy, it's like you have these young men that want to physically test themselves, that want to, basically go to war because that's what we were bred to do, and we don't have an outlet for that. So of course we're gonna do stupid shit. Like it makes no sense why like jujitsu or kickboxing or some kind of institutionalized training and combat could be put to a skill that could be developed that could you know then give you perhaps a career. Maybe you start training people, maybe you become like there's all these like things that we could do that really wouldn't change the resources we already have, but it's overlooked because we think we're evolved past it. We think we're evolved past our human nature that we think is so low. But the truth is, we're closer to cavemen than we are to God. We're closer to cavemen than we are to these moral, rational, conscious beings we think we are today. Like think of how a modern day intellectual will say talks about science. I promise you, you change the word science with God, Jesus, um, you know, Krishna, Buddha, like they're a religious fanatic. And most people don't even realize that they're saying this. Most people don't understand that you can't take away the part of your brain that holds God and not replace it with something else. So everyone believes in something, even if you believe in nothing, that's something. And it's so hypocritical, and I hate like that I notice it right away because it's frustrating. Like if you really want to have a good laugh, listen to Neil deGrasse Tyson talk about science and then just do what I said, change the word. It's the guy believes in science more than the biggest Bible thumper believes in the Bible.
Which, if he knew how to harness them, could assist him in the many situations in life where consciousness fails. Speaking of the modern individual, Nietzsche wrote, he has lost and destroyed his instinct, and can no longer trust the divine animal, and let go the reins when his understanding falters, and his way leads through deserts. The presence of historical, prehistorical, and animal drives has contributed to the existence of an abundance of contrary drives and impulses within us. We ourselves are a kind of chaos, as Nietzsche put it. In contrast to other philosophers
I
who
really
have
need to
posited the
read
human mind
Demian
to be
soon.
above all something unitary,
I really want to read the stuff I have right now. I will. I promise you I will. Because you've told me to read it a bunch of times. If you guys ever want to get me to read something, just tell me to read it a bunch of times. And like you'll program my subconscious. I'll see it in a bookstore. I'll see it online and I'll just buy it. That's the one way you can trick me into reading something. But again, this is just Jungian psychology. This is just Jungian the shadow or the mask that we wear to be part of society. That's the easiest way to think about Jung is to be part of something, to fit in, to not stick out and stand out from the rest of the crowd and get the security of everyone else around us, you have to wear a mask. And what is behind the mask is our true selves, our true nature. Whether it's this beastly animalistic side of us, whether it's this, creative, passionate side that we can't really express through our, you know, public life. And it's the more you hide behind the mask, the harder it is to get out from it. And the more the stuff behind the mask will try to fight and get out by any means necessary. And generally, it's always a bad way. Generally, it always bubbles up from the surface and becomes something that is very detrimental to your life.
Nietzsche radically proclaimed it to be a multiplicity, an aggregation of intertwined psychological entities. The most general picture of our essence, he wrote, is an association of drives, with constant rivalry and particular alliances with each other. Conceptualizing the human psyche as social structure of the drives and affects, as a sort of city in which numerous conflicting subpersonalities
I think this is a pretty good explanation. I think Jung in certain ways oversimplifies, but I think the example is tremendous. Um, I don't know the last time I had the chart pulled up, but in one of the videos there was a chart. It was the psyche, and then the top was the conscious, the bottom was the unconscious, and then inside that was the personal unconscious, the archetypal images, and then the collective unconscious. And I think it's an intertwining like this. I think it exists in this manner more than that perfect model. Yeah.
simultaneously live.
I
The
don't know if
task Nietzsche
what I
set
said
for
just made
himself
sense
and
at
his
all.
readers was to harmonize the abundance of contrary drives and impulses, and provide coordination to the plethora of competing forces within.
I'll try to find it.
He proposed that such coordination can be attained via the agency of an organizing idea, or ruling passion, a dominant master drive that forms the living center of the psyche, and co opts all the other drives.
Is my face over this? Yeah, it is. So Jung uses this very simplistic model. This is the conscious, this is the unconscious, and inside of this is all of these things. I'll explain them at some point in the future. I feel like I've explained all of these things a million times already. I don't like this. This is the one I was thinking about. So this is how Jung described it, whereas Nietzsche describes it as this city-like structure, which I think is more realistic because I think in all of our memories are different conceptions, different images, different things that we all kind of base our life off of.
To act in subordination to its end. The organizing idea is not found through an act of will, but, possessing a type of intelligence of its own, reveals itself throughout the course of one's life. One merely has to remain on the lookout for such a master drive, and not hinder its growth and activity. The organizing idea that is destined to rule keeps growing deep down. It begins to command. Slowly, it leads us back.
Okay, so this he's not talking about this. I don't know if we can get to it because it looks like there's just a call. Yeah, there's just no, there's not a call to action. Okay. Um, so he's talking about how to find yourself, how to find who you really are. And I think this is a question that's going to be very difficult to answer at first because how often have we thought about this? How often have we thought about what we really want? Um, look at the decisions you make on a daily basis. You know, are you at a job that really drives you out of bed? Are you at a school that you went to because you wanted to go to it? Do you base your day to day off of everything that you want to do, everything that you think is going to get you closer to that, compass, that moral compass that is guiding you in a certain direction? Or are you sacrificing parts of yourself for the sake of someone else? Are you doing something because your parents wanted you to do it? Are you doing something because a girlfriend wanted you to do it? Are you doing something because your friends wanted to go do something? Are you succumbing to peer pressure, basically? And if the answer to that is you're following everyone else, then you're going in the wrong direction. And at first, when you start asking yourself this question, you're not going to know the direction you want to go. It's going to be very foggy. It's going to be very confusing. But there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And the further you follow that tunnel, the more you think about these things, the more you ask yourself these questions, the more time you spend in thought on what you really want to do, the clearer that picture becomes. And eventually it'll become so clear that you don't even need to ask yourself. You'll just be guided. It'll be instinct. But it's overcoming the years and years and years of inauthenticity that is very difficult. But the moment you break free from these chains, the moment you stop fearing what people say about you, the moment you stop fearing how people view you or think about you, is the moment you're free. Nothing else matters if you have yourself. Nothing else matters if you're happy. And how could you ever be happier than finding yourself? How could you ever be happier than knowing who you really are and taking steps, taking actions to get to that place? That's happiness. That's finding everything that you needed to find in this world. And like, if you want to get this message and really understand it, this is what I really learned from Walden. I think Walden is one of the best examples of finding your true purpose, of understanding who you really are, and not caring what it takes to get to that place. And really putting things in perspective, because most of this just comes down to perspective. Most of happiness is purely just how we view our surroundings, how we view our scenarios. Um, the greatest example of this is like, have you ever been stressed for the sake of being stressed? Like you're extremely overwhelmed and you don't know why. And you start thinking about it and you're like, oh, it's because of that. And it's something small. And then in that instant, the greatest thing you can do for yourself is take out a piece of paper, go on your phone, go on your notes app, and start writing down the things that you have. And I promise you, if you write down 50 things that you have, 50 things that are just in front of you, you could just name off books in front of you. You'll feel a level of appreciation, a level of happiness, and a level of warmth that you haven't felt in years. And really, that's all it is. We just need to get past all the noise and realign with what it really is that we're here to find, which is just yourself.
Back from side roads and wrong roads. It prepares single qualities and fitnesses that will one day prove to be indispensable as means toward a whole. One by one, it trains all subservient capacities before giving any hint of the dominant task, goal, aim, or meaning. The organizing idea, in other words, arranges the plethora of competing forces in one's psyche in a manner that allows one to strive with single minded devotion towards a heroic.
So think about it like this. If you if you break a piece of glass, it shatters into 1,000 pieces and you can't make sense of it. But if you take it to that moment before it was shattered, it's crystal clear and you can see through it. That's really the example he's saying. And, you know, think about your day-to-day life. You wake up, you go on your phone, you see the news, you see this horrible thing, your friend texts you. You wake up and your mind is already going in 1,000 different directions. And the sad reality of it is we don't have unlimited brain power, we don't have unlimited energy. And the more you focus yourself on things that really matter, and it's up to you to find what really matters, the more it's going to be clear and the more guided you're going to be to the things that you really want. So, like, have you ever been forced to put down your phone and you work and it's like 10 times more productivity than normal? That's how you're meant to be at all times. And the more distracted we are, the more chaotic things are, the harder it is to find yourself and the harder it is to focus on something that's worthwhile.
Goal, which gives meaning to life. Nietzsche summarized the importance of the organizing idea in giving form to one's psyche in the following unpublished note. It is a myth to believe that we will find our authentic self after we have left behind or forgotten one thing or another. To make ourselves, to shape a form from various elements, that is the task of a sculptor, of a productive human being.
It is a myth to believe that we will find our authentic self after we have left behind or forgotten one thing or another. To make ourselves, to shape a form from various elements, that is the task. Okay, so what he's saying is everything that has happened to you, embrace it because it makes you who you are. This is an idea that I like to come back all the time to. It's by Khalil Gibran. I used this quote once, and someone was like, "Wow, that's a great quote." I was like, "It's not me. That's not me. I don't want credit for it." Every sorrow deepens your joy. Every time you experience pain, it allows you to appreciate happiness that much more. Every failure that happens teaches you how to one, overcome it next time, and two, teaches you how hard you worked for it to get there. Think if you won the lottery today, would it mean as much as if you wrote a book or you wrote a movie and it made that same amount? No. That's why we remember writers. That's like the majority of writers we know, they were probably wealthy, but they probably didn't have the level of wealth for the most part that most athletes do, most lottery winners do. And yet we remember these people's names because they left a legacy that was more than just money. They left an impact. They left part of their soul. They did something great. As Teddy Roosevelt said, they went out there and you know, at the worst, failed while daring greatly. And that's really the point I was trying to make. I butchered it. I
Nietzsche's
ruined it.
psychological insights are wide, varied, and always penetrating, a result of his ardent conviction that the psyche of modern man was in dire need of being dissected. But despite his piercing observations, there are critics who claim his insights into the nature of the human mind are irrelevant, because of the fact that at the young age of 44, he fell victim to a mental illness which remained with him until the end of his relatively short.
The problem with Nietzsche is he was a man that was consumed with great ego and it benefited him, but the fact that he wasn't venerated like the genius he was really got to him. And it's so ironic because he writes about not falling victim to conformity, not seeking out the approval of others. And, you know, maybe it was caused by his overall poor health, but it seems like his deterioration really came from that lack of acceptance. I feel like it would have been a lot easier for him had he experienced that success. And, a good juxtaposition to this is Kafka. Um, this is really my favorite aspect of Kafka. Franz Kafka is, if you don't know who he is, he's one of the greatest authors of all time and largely unknown while he was alive. He had a few things published, but he never really got any sort of acclaim, didn't sell anything, was, forced to work a not a menial job, a good job, but a thankless job. And, on his deathbed, he's writing a story called The Hunger Artist. And the final culmination of the story is that this guy starves himself, breaks his record. Nobody knows about it, but he knows about it and he's happy. And to me, that's Kafka accepting his fate. It's him accepting his lack of critical acclaim and understanding that he didn't create for anyone else but himself. And I wish that Nietzsche had understood this because I feel like, had he been able to live on, had he been able to embody his example, his 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 legacy would be much more distinguished and it would I don't know if distinguished is the right word because he's very well known, but I think it would be less misunderstood. He was a bright star that burned out too quick. Just one human. You're literally here as I'm about to finish. Like I'm about to lose my voice. I'm gonna end it in a few minutes, and now you show up. That's crazy. Come on. I I've been waiting for you to show up this whole time, and you weren't here. I can't believe you.
Life. Ignoring the fact that his illness may have been of an
In
organic
a world
origin,
where
there are some who may
everything forces you to be someone else, being yourself is the greatest achievement. You stole that from Emerson, didn't you? I haven't seen one of your lives in ages. Yeah, I haven't gone live in that
Ask,
long. I went
why
live
should anyone
yesterday, but
pay
that was
attention
it.
to ideas on how to become who you are? From a man who went mad.
Okay. This is one of the dumbest ideas because you have to be a little bit crazy to come up with something genius. You have to deviate from the norms at least a little bit to be able to think outside the box. Tesla, Einstein, Newton, Nietzsche, Emerson, Young, these people all kind of defied, you know, their genres, their fields. Steve Jobs, he did things that really nobody had seen and nobody's seen today. Elon, I don't know if you hate him or love him. Bezos, like anybody that does anything of note doesn't do it the traditional way. And maybe that's the moral of the story tonight.
To respond to this
You
question,
got to go
I'll
a little
conclude with an
crazy
eerie
so that
passage
you
from Nietzsche's
can
unpublished
you can leave your mark. What time am I going live tomorrow? It depends. I don't think I have anything to do tomorrow, so hopefully I'll go live earlier so that I can go live longer. Um, because it's 11 here for me, and not that I'm tired, but I feel like it's gonna ruin my day tomorrow. And I was like, I don't know if you call it that I was sick today. I just was like feeling under the weather. So hopefully I wake up feeling good. That's probably why I'm gonna end it pretty soon. But yeah, I really have to get a consistent schedule. I really have to like do at least one times stream to be great is to be misunderstood. That's self-reliance right
notes,
there.
in which he seems to foreshadow the
It's
fate
4
which will
a.m.
befall him later
All
in
right, I'm
life.
gonna make you stay
There
up
is a
to
false
6 a.m. I'm
saying,
gonna
he
keep
wrote,
streaming.
how can someone who can't save himself save others?
How can someone who can't save himself save others? Isn't that the hero's journey? Isn't that the idea of self-sacrifice? I mean, like, I just,
Supposing I have the key to your chains, why should your lock and my lock be the same?
all right. Yeah, I think it was a pretty fun stream tonight. Only 55 minutes. I feel like 10. I can't read the. You want this one? Is this one you wanted? Where's Fluffy Kitty? She crashed out. She's not here anymore. Luca Brasi. Oh shit, my thing's covering it. My bad. Hold on. I need to get monitors so I can like, because I have a bunch of stuff open on my screen.
Why should your lock
Is it this one?
into the nature of the human mind, an organic origin, Nietzsche's unpublished notes?
This is the one you're talking about, right? Can you see it now? Yeah, there we go. Okay. Did you get it? A dog ate your cat? What? What is wrong with you? You always just say some weird shit. Every time without fail, I just expect something to just. All right. I feel like it's a good place to leave it. I can feel myself losing my voice. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you guys for having a fun stream. It was a great time. I will catch you guys all tomorrow, hopefully. Have a good rest of your night. Peace out. Catch you in the next one.